Is the middle class in the UK disappearing? Because when I look round, I see new cars on the road and people living in big houses. But when you stop looking at the lifestyles and start looking at the numbers, you see a very different picture. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 genuinely shocking money statistics that explain why so many people look like they're doing well on social media, but the real numbers show a very different picture. I've worked in finance for over 15 years, and when you actually look at the data, something very uncomfortable jumps out. The stats don't just tell a story of bad habits, they tell the story of a system that's getting harder and harder to survive in. According to a 2025 Finder survey, the average person in the UK has just over £16,000 in savings. Now, you might think that this sounds fairly reasonable. That covers most people's expenses for a few months in case of a job loss. So we seem to be off to a good start. But there's another side to this which is much more shocking. Another stat that came out of this research, 2 in 5 Brits, or 39%, have £1,000 or less in savings, meaning that they would struggle to cover living expenses for more than a month. Now, in some ways, this is really the crux of everything we're going to be discussing in this video, because it reveals 2 possible reasons that the middle class in the UK is struggling so much. One, it's entirely conceivable that these are bad money habits, or they're at least partly responsible. But at the same time, it may also reveal some structural changes in the economy which are making it much more difficult to be middle class and build wealth in the UK. The key thing here is to start with that first £1,000. Once you've got that nailed down, gradually start trying to build your savings bucket to between 3 and 6 months of your living expenses. Nearly half, or 47% of UK adults do not know how much they have saved in their pension. Now, honestly, this was maybe one of the most surprising ones to me. And in some ways, it gets even worse when you consider this statistic. New research from the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association reveals 8 in 10 aren't confident they're saving enough for retirement. My biggest concern with both of these statistics ultimately is that if you don't know how much money you have saved for your retirement, how much money you have in your pension, how can you possibly determine if you're on track to live the life you want to live when you retire or meet whatever your money goals are? Because at the end of the day, there are 2 parts to this decision: how much you need to save and how much you already have saved. And this is compounded by the fact that this report estimated that the average person in the UK will accumulate 11 separate pension pots over their lifetime. So once you've got all your pension details together, you can really figure out where you stand, and you have a few possible options. You can look to consolidate your pensions if you want to. This will potentially help you save on fees. It means that you can more accurately manage your investments and track your overall progress to make sure you are actually on track to retire when you want to retire. A recent UK survey found that 82% of adults don't invest at all. And somewhat more alarmingly, according to a 2025 Finder survey, only 15% of UK adults currently have a stocks and shares ISA. Now, both of these, again, illustrate another massive problem. We are very blessed in the UK to have the stocks and shares ISA. This is a way that normal people with normal jobs can meaningfully invest in the stock market and use it to build wealth. Just a quick recap. The Stocks and Shares ISA is a tax-advantaged account. You can contribute up to £20,000 per year into your Stocks and Shares ISA, and all your investments within that wrapper can grow free from tax. People assume that cash is safe, that it will be the best way for them to fund their retirement and to build wealth. But worse than that is that people don't want to invest. They view it as risky, as gambling, and they think that the investing world is all the same, that a global index fund is somehow the same as a meme coin or something they read on Wall Street Bets. And this really gets to the heart of what we're talking about, because without investing, you'll have to work harder for longer. 94% of new cars are bought on finance, and the average payment is between £350 and £400 per month. But at the end of the day, this can be a terrible money decision. You are basically paying to rent an asset that you will never own and which will only ever depreciate in value, and the more you use it, the less valuable it will be, and the money that you borrowed to do all this is at a very, very high interest rate. We should also point out that there is a massive, massive opportunity cost if you're in your 20s and you decide to lease a car. Let's just say you spend £500 a month for 3 years. That's a total of £18,000. Put that money into a stocks and shares ISA, into a global index fund, and get around 10% a year. And if you never contributed again, you just set it up and left it, that investment after 30 years would be worth £315,000 in an investment account. And that is the real opportunity cost. But just try this instead. Choose a budget, the amount you actually want to spend on your car, and find cars that match that budget rather than the other way around. That way you're framing the decision based on the car you actually want that meets your needs, and it can be really helpful to stop you from overspending on your car. Now let's move on to buy now, pay later. 42% of adults use services like Klarna for essentials like groceries, and even more surprisingly, high-income households, those earning over £100,000, are the fastest growing demographic using buy now, pay later. And I think maybe the most important thing this shows is that bad money decisions and bad money management can play a really big role no matter where you sit on the income spectrum, especially when you look at higher income households. Most importantly, it probably tells us that, for the most part, you can't outgrow your bad money habits. Now, clearly, earning more money can solve plenty of money problems, but not necessarily if you take your bad money habits with you as you move up the income scale. Me personally, and the view of this channel, has been to find the things you want to spend your money on, the things that actually bring you real joy in your life, and cut costs aggressively just about everywhere else. This also does point to the fact that, inescapably, the essentials are just getting more expensive. Next up, the median gross salary for full-time employees in the UK was £39,039 in the year to April 2025. That is an increase of 4.3% from last year, when the average full-time pay was £37,439. But there is a very worrying second half to this. Median real wages are actually lower than in 2008, a decline of roughly 8 to 10% in real purchasing power. If wages had continued to grow at their pre-crisis trend, workers would be £11,000 a year better off today. And in some ways, this is the source of so many of the problems that we are talking about in this video. But why is this? Because the truth is, real wages aren't necessarily what is in your pay slip, what hits your bank account every month on payday. And that's because of the role that inflation plays. If inflation is 3% and you only get a 2% raise, then you are 1% worse off than you were last year. And this is down to a whole host of factors, which frankly we could and have indeed spent many videos talking about. But just quickly, we could look at things like investment in the UK, which has completely flatlined since the financial crisis and got even worse since Brexit. This has led to a flatlining in worker productivity. And as you can see here, wages will very closely follow worker productivity. The average home in the UK now costs between 8 and 9 times the average salary, compared to 3 to 4 times in the 1990s. So basically, in the 1990s, the price of a typical UK home was around 4 times the average annual salary, meaning you'd need roughly 4 years of income to buy a house. Today, that ratio has more than doubled, hovering closer to 8 or 9 times average earnings, one of the most unaffordable periods in recent history. And just a depressing but interesting statistic, it is a fact that houses haven't been this expensive relative to incomes since the Napoleonic Wars, which is just an insane sentence to say. But at the end of the day, a delay in home ownership means you have a period where people could be taking more risks, but they can't because they want to get onto the property ladder, which I think is understandable. They might choose to start a business, but when so much of their income goes towards housing costs, which is an absolute necessity, they might choose to defer and never start that business. And frankly, it seems obvious to say, but when people have to spend so much of their paycheck on housing costs, it gives them less money to go out and spend in the rest of the economy. And this last part is true no matter if you're buying or renting. We have a video coming out about why you should overpay on your mortgage instead of investing. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. It should be coming out in a couple of weeks or so. And we should also point out that home ownership in the UK has historically been a really important source of wealth generation for middle-class people. So removing access to that opportunity by people getting on the housing ladder much later in their life means that they miss out on that wealth accumulation in their 20s and their 30s and potentially even into their 40s. They could be going out and spending money in their local coffee shops, restaurants, pubs, bars, retail, high streets, but no, they're spending it on their housing. Approximately £274 billion is sitting in UK bank accounts earning zero interest. Now, as we've mentioned, this £274 billion at, say, a 3% inflation rate means that the economy is effectively losing out on £8 billion of purchasing power every year. People think that by putting money into a savings account that they're being safe, that investing is risky and they don't want to lose all their money. But the problem ultimately is this: you are locking yourself out of potential returns in the future. So what you're basically saying is, I would rather have a guaranteed loss of value of your money from inflation, and you're choosing that over the potential gain you could be making by investing. And as the numbers show us, the longer you invest for, the less likely you are to lose money. And I think so much of this is driven by a lack of understanding of money and investing in the UK. It's just something that we've never prioritized. And if you look at our investment rates compared to other countries, we do woefully. This means that people work harder, save more, and they still fall behind. Now, I want to get into one that's been discussed a lot recently. The average debt for UK student loan borrowers who finished their university course in 2024 was about £53,000 at the point they become liable to start repayment. And unbelievably, this statistic gets even worse. Many individual cases are well above the average. For example, over 150,000 borrowers owe £100,000 or more in UK student debt. And this is a real problem. And I'm glad that it has been getting a bit of attention recently. And this debt is just a massive problem for a few reasons, even for those people who don't have this debt. The first is that most debt is reduced in real terms by inflation. Student loan debt isn't. And that's because the interest rate on this debt is charged above the rate of inflation. Like with housing, if people have this debt, then they're less likely to put money into the rest of the economy. People are also less likely to take risks and start a business when they've got this enormous overhead to worry about. And I just want to clear something up. Yes, your loan might get written off, depending on your plan, after 30 or 40 years. But what that means is you have to pay an additional 9% income tax for basically the rest of your working life. This creates a permanent drag on net pay for those people, amongst all the other challenges that we've been discussing. I just want to point out that the University of Oxford is the oldest university in the UK, founded in 1098, and you didn't have to start paying for tuition until 1998. So we managed to go over 900 years without people needing to pay to go to university, let alone at these extortionate rates. And our final statistic, only 23% of Brits passed a comprehensive money literacy quiz in 2025, meaning fewer than 1 in 4 answered at least half of the questions correctly. Now, this, to some degree, I think gets to the crux of what we're talking about. So much of what we've discussed here stems from this problem, that financial literacy is a big problem, and that as a nation, money is still taboo, that people don't take the time to educate themselves about money, and this leaves them worse off for it. And I'm not blaming those people. It's just something, as a country, we don't teach people. So what do all these statistics tell us? That there is a mix of structural and personal. You don't have to buy a brand new car, and you certainly don't have to finance it. But if you went to university and now the terms of your loan have been unilaterally changed by consecutive governments, then that is a problem which isn't your fault, but nonetheless you're going to have to deal with. And I think for the purposes of this discussion, to really capture the full picture like we've tried to do in this video, you have to look at these two groups. You have to look at what are people personally responsible for and what are the structural changes in the economy which are just making it impossible for people in the middle class to get a leg up. We have 3 videos on screen. We have top tips from ISA millionaires, the one missing piece from 99% of financial advice, and how to invest for beginners. You've been watching Modern Money Talk. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thanks for watching.